Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual event with Brookline Booksmith, featuring Heather Einhorn, Adam Staffaroni, and for their book, The Curie Society, in conversation with Ryan North. And all those lovely people are around me, as I'm sure you can see. My name is Alex A., and I am a bookseller at Brookline Booksmith, which is located in Brookline, Massachusetts. If you're familiar with our store, welcome to this virtual version. But if this is your first time hearing about us, we're so happy to have you. We're really excited to have all of you join our community this evening, and we appreciate your support of Heather, Adam, Ryan, and our bookstore through your purchases and attendance. The chat and question box are open, so feel free to make use of those. Remember to set your chat to all panelists and attendees. Right at the bottom, there's a little blue option that you can toggle who your messages are being sent to. You want to make sure everyone can see them. And feel free to, talk to each other, make friends throughout the chat. Don't worry. While the event is going on, feel free to talk. And also, if you have any questions, we're going to have time for a brief Q&A right at the end. So make sure to drop those in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. It's just over a little bit from the chat. And please note that Brookline Booksmith has a strict policy against abusive behavior and language, and at our discretion, any attendee can be removed from an event for partaking in such behavior. However, I know you're all lovely people and wouldn't dream of doing such a thing. It's important to say. All right, so now on to the fun part where I get to introduce these lovely people. So first up, we've got tonight's moderator, Ryan North, who is the New York Times bestselling and Eisner-winning writer, whose recent work includes the nonfiction How to Invent Everything, a survival guide for the stranded time traveler, the semi-fictional graphic novel adaptation of Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, and the so far fictional Unbeatable Squirrel Girl series for Marvel. He also twice collaborated with William Shakespeare on choose your own path versions of his plays. All of those books you can find at the bookstore. We are big fans. And he currently lives in Toronto, where he writes for video games, television, and long-running webcomic Dinosaur Comics. Oh, and I have a note here that says he once messed up walking his dog so badly it made the news. So thank you, Ryan, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And then, of course, we've got two authors of the hour this evening. We're very excited to have them. Heather Einhorn, after many years as an executive in the entertainment industry, made the leap to co-found Einhorn's Epic Productions, so she could create stories showcasing heroic women characters, including the popular scripted podcast Daughters of DC and Lethal Lit, a Tigdor's mystery. Some things are just a lot more fun to say out loud than they are to read. I'm sorry.
Titles.
We've also got Adam Staffaroni, who's the co-creator and is a storyteller at home in a variety of different media, including comics, audio, drama, and more. He co-created the scripted podcast Daughters of DC and Lethal Lit, and has edited award-winning comic series and holds degrees from Dartmouth College and the Center for Cartoon Studies. Heather and Adam together bring us the Curie Society, which follows a team of young women recruited by an elite secret society originally founded by Marie Curie, with the mission of supporting the most brilliant female scientists in the world. The heroines use their smarts, gumption, and cutting-edge technology to protect the world from rogue scientists with nefarious plans. Readers will follow recruits Simone, Taj, and Maya as they decipher secret codes, clone extinct animals, and develop autonomous robots and go on high-stakes missions. So, a lot of fun. I'm very excited. I got to actually take a look at the book while I was at the store the other day, and it is awesome. So it's a pleasure to have them all here with us tonight. And this is the part where we're all going to clap. Please welcome Ryan North, Heather Einhorn, and Adam Staffaroni.
Love to applaud for myself. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We just got introductions there, and we just got sort of a brief pitch for the book. But I'd like to give both you, Adam and Heather, a chance to, if we had just entered an elevator together, the elevator's going to last a minute or two, and you really want to pitch me on this book, give me that pitch.
All right, Adam, do you want me to start?
Take it away, Heather.
Okay. Before I start, I should say this is fictional because we've definitely had people think that this was real. So
I wish it were real. I'll say that I wish it were real.
Me too. We unfortunately in some of our pitches we did actually wind up fooling some people. So I'd like to put the disclaimer up front that in 1903 Mary Curie started a secret society founded to support the most brilliant female scientific minds in the world. And today, the society still exists. There's secret chapters all across the world recruiting the best scientific minds. So that's a 2-second pitch. Adam, you can do more if you want, but and it's fiction. It's fiction. I'll just say, we wish it was real, but it's not.
And our book follows the new class of recruits at the fictional Edmonds University as they discover what the Curie Society is for the first time, and then become the new class joining the chapter and go on high stakes international missions to learn about science and also prevent some bad guys from doing bad stuff.
That's good. I like it. I want to actually start with that because I feel like my favorite sort of science fiction, alternate history kind of stories all revolve around taking one detail of history and changing it so it goes separately. And I feel like you could almost conceive of this comic, of this graphic novel, as being what if she started this secret society and everything else kind of spins out from that. Is that how you conceived of the book? Or was that like, did you start with what if and run from there? Or did you start with, you know what, I want to do all this incredible like espionage, secret society, science stuff, and build it around that? I'm wondering how the book was conceived of initially.
Sure, yeah. So the original idea for the book sprung from a panel we went to at Comic-Con, which is the best place to come up with awesome ideas.
Yes.
And the panel was basically about female representation of STEM characters in media, or lack thereof should really be the title of the panel.
And it was a great set of panelists, some women scientists, some writers for like Big Bang Theory and other science fiction shows.
But there's room to improve for representation of women in STEM fields, in fiction. I think it's fair to say.
Oh my gosh. Well, so we're at this panel. It's all these super smart women talking about like what we can do. And then a question gets asked and it's like, well, okay, great. Like we all know there's an issue here, both with just like the real women of science and getting their stories told, right? And then also on the fiction side, characters that sort of embody those women. And then one of the panelists said, well, something we could do is have one female head of a lab, like Q from James Bond, one. And then somebody said, well, what would be even better would be, what if there was two women together in a lab together? Can you think of it? And everyone clapped and was so excited. And Adam and I left that panel and we were like, this is terrible. Like that we need to sort of like, so it just sort of sprang, the Curie Society, the initial idea sprang from this idea that we can do better in terms of just the media that's out there to inspire young women. So that was the initial idea. And then, once we started doing the research about what was actually happening and what had happened, it was like, oh my God, like there's like this whole world here of like Hidden Figures style, all of these women that did all these amazing things. So what if, to your point, we flipped it and we said, well, what if this was on purpose? Like this is like they were part of this cool secret society the whole time. And it was totally plausible because none of the women got credit for any of the awesome things that they did. So it totally made sense.
No, that's beautiful. I love the idea of like taking this historical injustice and be like, well, what if they were the ones who controlled it and there was a reason behind it? And like they were the ones profiting from this and not the men who were just repressing them.
Yeah. Right. And it was kind of it was also a fun storytelling challenge for ourselves because it was just like, okay, if the bar is set at 2, what's the most we can do? And the answer was all. So how would we pull that off? How do we figure out if we give ourselves the kind of challenge of doing a lab with all women, how do we make that cool and fun and as exciting and interesting as possible?
Yeah, I noticed one of the things that always, as a writer makes me want to pull up my hair is when you see, and you see it thankfully less these days, where you have a team and there's like the tech guy and the heavy guy and the cool guy and the woman. And then that woman, that female character ends up representing all women. you can't, it becomes this trap where, if that woman is kind of stern, are you saying that all women are kind of stern? But you sidestep that entirely since you have two characters who are women, or three or four or more. And I assume you were thinking about how this lets you have characters and not archetypes when you're writing a book.
Well, it was great because where we started, that's such an awesome way to think about it. We started this book by saying, okay, they're all the smart one. So we eliminated, because when you have female ensemble pieces, to your point, it's like, well, one's the pretty one and the smart one's got to be the frumpy one with the glasses in the corner, so
Yeah.
really did want to take all of these sort of stereotypes and archetypes and flip, put them in a blender, flip them all around and create as authentic characters as we could that were more representative of young women today. Because the other thing is, just on the fiction comic book side, is there's just not that many characters to pull from there either, heroically. And so there's plenty of room to play, which we loved.
Yeah. Let's talk about the characters a bit. I don't want to spoil too much because there are people here who have not read the book, but you've got, the comic follows these three new recruits to the Curie Society. And they don't fall into these archetypes of like the smart one, the pretty one, and I don't know, the one who likes sports cars. I can't even think of a third. Can you talk a bit about like building these characters and the people around you that inspire them? Because I think from my light cyber stalking that there was you interviewed people for this book. You did your research, you did the work.
Yes.
We were inspired by Curie. It was a real scientific process actually that we applied to this book, gathering the data and making sure it was authentic. But we interviewed, I think it was upwards of 20 different female scientists, female non-binary scientists for this book. And so what you see in terms of the characters is us pulling our favorite sort of moments from those conversations. A lot of what you see there is real, is bits and pieces of all these different amazing conversations. We had one scientist who, just like Taj, on the weekends she was a DJ, and we were just really, really surprised. And she was talking about this over, and this is one of the themes of the book, is the overlap between arts and sciences, which is very Curie because she was all about interdisciplinary and teamwork, and so the spirit of that we felt was very appropriate for this book. But yeah, we were like, one of the questions that we asked was like, what do you do on the weekend? Because everybody, there's this stereotype about like being in the lab and you're just like, so we wanted to really get to know the women that we interviewed. And yeah, it's all in there. Everything you see is real. And being into fashion was something that was like, oh my God, like you wouldn't even believe how crazy it is when there's like a female scientist who's also into fashion. Like she's getting total flack for that, because it's like, well, why are you spending time doing your hair? Like you should be, you can't win when you're a woman. It's like, you just
yeah. You don't say.
Yeah. And especially if they have a social media presence, the women we talked to who were active on social media, they're there to reach young people, but then they get all the trolls who are like, anytime they don't fit the exact archetype, that stereotype of what a scientist should be, there was someone there to try to troll them for it, which was crazy, because we talked to so many amazing women. Pick up the book. In the back of the book, we have profiles of a lot of the women scientists we talked to, and they're all doing incredible things. But the fun of it was, we were starting out kind of at the same spot of just having these very limited archetypes that we had seen on media to kind of go off of originally when we were starting to build these characters. So when we were talking to everyone, the fun part was just listening for the most unexpected details about who they were, where they came from, what they were interested in, and the things that jumped out at us the most as the things we least predicted hearing were the things that were the most fun to put into the book and use to build up our characters.
I mean, I love that you were doing this research to get to meet female non-binary scientists and to learn this information, but I also love it from like from my perspective, I remember confessing to a writer friend of mine that I was like, I really find character hard. And I don't know if I should tell you this, but I tend to base characters off of people I know. And he was like, dude, everyone does that. This character, best friend from childhood. This character is this guy or this woman. And the idea of what if we interviewed 20 people and took the best from them and used this to build a handful of characters, that's great. That feels like you learn a lot about people, but also like you've got these character traits that you wouldn't have come up with on your own, but are instantly authentic because they are literally things that people are doing. It's great.
Absolutely. And we had the pretense of wanting to ask them about all their research and all the scientific stuff they were doing, which was dense, and we learned a lot, but also a lot of it went over our heads. But at the same time, it was really listening for all these character details, which were just fascinating and then so much fun to work with.
Would you, and I'm going to give you a compliment here in the form of a question, so be ready for that. Would you feel like because you spoke to so many people that's reflected in the work, where I feel like reading the book, one of the messages, I'm going to put words in your mouth here, one message I felt of the book was like, there's no one right way to be a scientist or a woman scientist. There's all these different ways of doing it. They're all great. Here they are. Do you feel like that was part of that process, or was that sort of, you started with that idea and it was just confirmed by talking to all these amazing people that you interviewed?
Yeah, I mean, when we went back and just sort of looked at, starting with Curie herself, and you look at the history of all these amazing female scientists, it's it's there, but that history is sort of buried, and so once we started interviewing all these different amazing scientists, that became super, super clear. There was definitely some thematic similar, like the idea of mentorship, which is something that is a very important part of this book, but that popped up on almost every single call, was this idea of mentorship. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it was all over the place. I started as an arts major. I started here, I started there. And so there's no, there really is no one path to, these different awesome scientific careers. That is 100% confirmed by all of the awesome people that we spoke with. There's no right or wrong answer, which is also very scientific, right? The idea of trying and failing, and it's not a failure, it's just gathering data.
More data, more grist for the mill.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
So, I mean, I feel like we were talking about the characters and the inception of the book, but I do want to talk about the medium itself, because this is a comic book and comics is a collaborative medium. And I'm wondering what made you, I mean, you're at Comic-Con, so maybe landing on comics was a very short trip there, but was there a point where you thought, this idea we have, this story we want to tell, could it be something else? Was it always going to be what it is in a comic format?
We took a look. So when we went back to do the initial research for this book and look at the actual facts about female scientists, and then we did the flip side, we said, well, what's been going on in comics? And that wasn't great either.
No.
So, it's mostly, the STEM characters are we talk about like Poison Ivy or Harley Quinn as being the sort of almost, I would say, like best example, most known examples of these types of characters. And these are villains. And then meanwhile, you have Tony Stark, sort of, showing that for the male side. So, we were just like, what, this should be a comic book, because this is also putting new comic book characters out there that can be inspirational on this level, that aren't villains and that are more representative of the women today. So yeah, Adam, I think it was always, once we went down the rabbit hole, we were there. we were just all in on it.
Yeah, once the idea kind of started to take shape, we realized this would be, so because we do tell stories in other formats. We do audio dramas. We do some digital stuff, but this one always just felt like it had to be a comic. Just when we started building, like thinking about the history of the Curie Society, our fake history, our invented history, just being able to show like, a cool secret headquarters for the society and all this other stuff, and the sci-fi elements were like, oh, that would be a shame if we didn't have a visual attached to that. So comics just always felt like the right fit for it.
So I know the thing I love about comics is that a lot of people who read them also are interested in making them, or at least curious about it. Can you talk about how you met your collaborators and what that process was like and how you brought them on board? Because I would love to know, as a guy who writes comics but does not draw, how do you convince someone to draw a comic book that you've been conceiving of?
Well, the first person, after we got introduced to the wonderful people at MIT who took a chance on this super crazy project, was Joan Hilty, who's our editor. And we sat down with her and we said, we have one choice. There's one person and the list is short and it's you. So please join this team. So that's my advice to you for the pitch, is just say there's only one. It's just you. Please join us. Because we knew her vision would be so perfect. Like her energy and her vision for this book would be so perfect. And then Adam, I think Joan actually introduced us to Janet and Sonia. I think that was the sequence.
Yeah, we worked on it for a while with Joan. Heather and I both had worked at DC Comics at the same time that Joan was an editor there. And we just really respected her work and her style. So the first person she brought on board who helped develop some of the early kind of concepts for what the society would look and feel like was Pia Guerra, from the artist from Why the Last Man. And when Joan said, hey, Pia is really into cool science stuff like this. She doesn't have a ton of time, but she, I mentioned it to her and she would love to do something. So getting to work with her for a little bit on some of the early ideas was amazing, because we were just huge fans of Why the Last Man. It's an amazing comic. Mm-hmm. And from there, we kept building out the story and the characters, and then Joan had known Janet from a while back. Janet had just put out a graphic novel called Angel City with Oni Press that we really enjoyed. We thought it was really fun, and then Sonia was one of Joan's students at Micah. So we hit the nail on the head when we told Joan it had to be you, because we knew that she would just be able to assemble like an amazing team.
One of the things that I stumbled into by accident, it ended up working really well, was when I was first writing Squirrel Girl and trying to figure out like who this character is. The artist Erica Henderson had sent over some sketches she had done just blind of here's different ways Squirrel Girl could look. And those sketches had so much verve and personality to them that when I was stuck on the story, I'd have the sketches open another window. I'd look and be like, oh, what would this character do? And it helps so much with the writing of the story to just have an image of what they looked like. It sounds like maybe that's what you experienced with Pia. And did Jen do the character designs too, or was it, how did that come out?
Pia did the first round of character designs, and then Sonia, Sonia made some changes when she came in and made some tweaks. But those early character designs that we worked on with Pia were there to kind of exactly what you were saying. Whenever we were stuck, looking at the character designs, looking at their face is so much easier to like try to get inside their head. Yeah.
No, it's magic. It's a trick.
Yeah. Erica's amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Pia wound up doing also, we didn't ask her to do this just because she was like into it and so excited. She did this like amazing sort of, it looked like faded historical sketch of Curie herself. Like that was not part of what, the whole, and then we loved it so much that it is in the book. Like that one sketch, we're just like, we were like really obsessed with it. So like all that kind of stuff that just came out from and that's when we knew we were on the right track, when everyone we were talking to about this project was like, yes, yes, here's like a historical image of Curie. Like,
So I'm going to do a smooth segue here because it sounds like you and your collaborators are friends, and friendship is a big theme in the book. There's a lot of the friendship between the three main characters developing, the friendship, sort of the driving plot of the narrative involves the friendship and the end of a friendship of other people. So I guess this is less of a question, more of a command, but talk to me about friendship.
Well, in a lot of female ensemble pieces, you'll see that they are fighting about a boy. That is a common sort of female ensemble trope, is that there's a boy or something, you know, that is a lot of where it heads on a typical basis. So for us, it's two things. It's friendship between the girls, you know, and obviously there's going to be some conflict there because Avenger style, you know, we don't want the team just totally getting along, because they also have to learn how to work together and also learn how their different scientific skills can help make the Voltron of awesomer science, right? Because that's like also the history of Curie, but also this idea of mentorship of older women mentoring younger women as well. So it really is a through line of the book. It was something that was so critically important to all the women we spoke with to make sure that was emphasized. And so it's women helping women. Like, that's a big part of the way that we can move forward. It's not only like normalizing this, but also, you know, this idea of like, let's bring each other up, for sure.
I'm realizing as you're saying this that like scientific method is, you know, it's not a formula for truth, but it's a formula to be gradually less wrong. You try stuff and it doesn't work, and you learn from it, you try something else. And that's kind of the way the characters first interact. They show up and they're like, I know myself, I know how this is going to be, and then it doesn't work. And they're like, okay, how do I actually interact with other people like this? Because my first thing doesn't work and I need for it to work. So I feel like you've built the scientific method into a relationship dynamic, which is really cool.
It's all about changing your perception, right? And that's what the characters experience in the book, which is, you know, in your mind, you try something and you fail. And that's how you describe it in your own mind, as a failure.
Right.
But if you look at it, and this could be just applied to anything in your life, if you look at it with the scientific lens, that's not a failure. You've just now gathered data on a way that is not the way forward. And now you're going to try something new to gather more data. You know, and really it's like arts and just relationships. It's like, it really is like a way to like live life that deprioritizes this idea of failure, which so many women are sort of self-critical in that way and think of things as failures, whereas men don't necessarily think about things that way. It's just part of the journey of being a lady. But yeah, no, that it's scientific principle, but it's also life. Very YA, yeah.
And also that idea of failure is what, from talking to all the women we talk to, like, that is the thing that discourages so many women from like pursuing a STEM major in college or pursuing advanced classes in high school, is just this idea that if I get one B, if I get a B or a C on a test, then I'm not cut out for this. Then I should just give up and I should just quit, because that's been reinforced in their minds. You know, there are people there telling them basically, if they're anything less than perfect, that they should go do something else. So like we really wanted to counteract that narrative as much as we could.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend who's an astrophysicist, and she takes pains when she's speaking to be like, you know what? I need y'all to know that I do this professionally. I have a doctorate. I am still not good at math. Like it takes time and it takes effort. And this idea that if you're not effortlessly proficient and successful at something, it means you shouldn't be doing it is, you know, that's toxic. That's gonna leave you doing nothing, because you're always gonna feel like you're not meant to be doing this. When, you know, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes getting your negative results and turning those into positive results through repeated application of further experimentation.
Well,
exactly.
That's perfect.
So let's talk about the science, because there is a lot of science in the book. What I loved about it was that it's very accessible. I felt like you could go into this cold and learn some things and not be lost, but also like there was a bit in the book about de-extinction. I had recently done a deep dive into that for something I'm working on, and I was like, this is all accurate. This checks out. Like, this is at the level that I've been studying this for 2 months, and I'm like, yes, I can run with this. So talk about the science for a bit, if you could.
Well, we had amazing science led by massive science was sort of coordinated with all the different science advisors that we worked with for this book. But yeah, the we like to call it sort of spinach in your brownies is sort of how we described our scientific
But
methodology.
that doesn't sound good.
Well, the thing is, you don't taste the spinach. All you taste is the brownie, but it's in there. And so,
have you tried these? Like, are you certain you don't taste the spinach?
don't ask me about baking.
I've never.
More of a Maya on that front. Definitely other people executing the recipe. You're not supposed to taste the spinach if it's done correctly. But yeah, no, the idea is that exactly like it's a spy thriller. It's exciting. It's action adventure. And then you look up at the end of the book and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Did I just learn about de-extinction? Because we really wanted to get young women just excited about this and not have it feel like a textbook or if it's like just sort of like facts that you have to memorize. And so that was the sort of methodology, was just to sneak it in there in a really, really accessible way. So it feels entertaining, but also you've learned something.
And then we have the glossary in the back of the book that follows up on some of it, and all the advisor profiles. So specifically the de-extinction stuff, that we had an advisor, her name's Britt, who wrote a book called Rise of the Necrofauna. So if that's something you're really interested in, you could look up who Britt is and, check out her book and read up more on the topic. So we wanted to give everyone enough to whet their appetite and, just open the door for them to learn more if that was the thing that really hooked them.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I got a graduate degree in computational linguistics, and I did not know there was a field until I started grad school. If you don't know what's out there, you don't know what interests you until you see it. But I do want to talk about that glossary at the back, because I was about to say that thrilled me, but I feel like it would be so on brand for me to say I was thrilled by a glossary at the back of the book. But I mean, in Squirrel Girl, I tried to do the same thing where we'd work in computer science and just have it be part of the story and put as they apparently say, spit into the brownies for you. But having the glossary at the end where it's like, here's some terms we saw, and here's the ideas behind them, and here's sort of what we're talking about of the society. I thought it was really cool, and I loved it. And I want glossaries at the back of all my books now.
When we were putting together the glossary, we also had the same reaction. So there's no shame in being excited about the glossary, because we were actually surprised at how many different concepts, because even like to use the example from earlier, baking, the chemistry, chemistry of baking, and doing your laundry incorrectly, and the idea of color fast, it's just sort of, it was all in there. Every as much as we possibly could jam this thing with as much science as possible, and we were surprised as well.
So let me ask you about one, because one that was new to me was, you mentioned there's one invention, they use a plane that's powered by ionic wind, I believe. Yep. Which seemed like a form of chemically propelled flight. Could you tell me about that? Electrically propelled flight, yes.
Yeah. This is an actual experiment that researchers at MIT have been working on. So we found out about this experiment, and currently they've flown a model plane, a pretty good size one, but inside the field house. So they've proved the technology can work for a model, but our goal in the book was to, project science out 10 or 20 years in the future. This is something that it's not completely fictional. It's not like a Star Trek teleporter or any of these things that are just completely fabricated. This is something that we could base on a real experiment that happened and could, in theory, be developed in the next, few decades. So the fun about that was just, finding cool stuff that was in very early stages, and saying, we would say our goal is that one day somebody who read about this type of technology first in our book would go on to be part of the team that invented it in the real world 20 or 30 years from now.
I love it. I love also the subtle feminist theme there of, if female scientists and researchers had not been pushed down through 100 years of patriarchy, we would be 20, 30 years more advanced than we are right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's a true statement.
So ionic wing, it's using electricity to move air over a wing.
Yeah, basically. It's, I mean, you can actually, I don't know if the Sharper image still exists, but you could buy like a house fan that works on the same technology.
Really?
But no moving parts. And part of why it could, in theory, be so efficient for an airplane design is that there are no moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
So the maintenance costs would be drastically lower. It runs just on electricity. You don't necessarily need jet fuel. It's not quite powerful enough for takeoff, so it might need to take off. But once you're fully airborne, theoretically, the opposing voltages on the front and rear edge of the wing just charges air and in a certain way that makes it move past the wing at speed and then create lift the same way a wing normally would create lift.
That's so cool. See, I knew nothing about that. And I was like, all this other science in the book I recognize. And this seems like they invented it, but they couldn't have because everything else here is so grounded. So yeah. I'm thrilled to be learning that. That's so cool.
It was fun. And I mean, some of the stuff we thought we were being really advanced on, and then from the time we started writing about it to when the book came out, it was already invented. So we thought we were being super cutting edge, and then we weren't, and other stuff we succeeded in projecting out as far as we could, as far as we wanted to.
Future catches up with you.
Oh, much faster than we expected.
Yeah.
One of the other, we talked about friendship in the book. One of the other themes in the book I saw was that of a choice where the characters are sort of deciding kind of who they want to be. And one of the major conflicts results around the choice of that happened in a friendship, 20, 30 years ago before the story started. Was that important to you, this idea of seeing how these choices impact the rest of the world? Or is this sort of, there's choices in every story, and Ryan, you just should look more closely because they're everywhere all around you?
Well, I hate to say science ethics, because again, that would be the spinach in our brownies. But
I love that spinach.
But yeah, that was one of the spinaches that sort of informed that theme that you're touching on, the theme of choice. Because really where we are, like Adam said, like technology is progressing so fast now to the point where things that are like, oh my God, we put in this book, and by the time the book comes out, they're already real. Like that's how fast things are moving. So the idea with those characters making decisions in the past and how they have ramifications in the future, we wanted to tie that all in very sort of like, I would say, Magneto, Professor X style to these ideas of sort of science ethics and where it's all going and the choices that you make as scientists and how those influence your relationships as well. We're very much inspired by the sort of like, we'll call it like the Theranos way of thinking about science, where science is influenced by this sort of spirit of these tech companies, where it's this move fast and break things. The laws are moving too slowly to catch up even with the science. And so, we're going to make the choice to make the world better by ignoring the laws, versus the Curie Society, which is more about, even though it is a secret society, they're a little bit slower. They're going to be more methodical. It's the Curie approach to science and technology and how that gets rolled out into the world. And you see that with all those de-extinction sections in the book. And so, yeah, it's not just choices as people, it's the choices we make with our innovations, and our, the future of humanity really depends upon a lot of these choices right now that scientists are making. So it's a cool area that we were really excited about touching on.
And from talking to some of our advisors, they were just saying, sometimes we've gotten to the point where the science is moving faster than the ethics. Yeah. So every time this new technology is invented, it can kind of upend the previous thought about what was ethical and not ethical. And then everybody kind of has to pivot and incorporate this new technology into how they're thinking of the overall ethics of that particular field. And that was just like fascinating and mind-blowing. So we wanted to make sure to get some of that debate into
No, absolutely. I felt like we are in an age, a moment where legitimately a handful, or even one person, can have a huge effect on the world by the choices they make with the technology that they control. And in most eras of human history, that's not the case. You'd have to be a king or some sort of controller to have a political function, but to just be like, to invent a thing and realize this could have some really great upsides or some really great downsides, or maybe both, depending on how we use it. That's something that like we are literally dealing with in the world now. And it was a nice engine for this narrative of having two people who have made different choices with this one piece of technology and how that impacts the world. I think it's a fascinating subject with a lot of real world implications.
We could have written a whole book on just, and it's so interesting. I mean, even just this week, I mean, Elon Musk is about to host SNL. Like this is where we are in a moment in time. I mean, it's like scientists are becoming, or I don't know if you'd call him a scientist. I mean, whatever. That we could debate that. We could debate that another time, but they are becoming celebrities, and so it's and how that influence is wielded is going to have major ramifications for where everything goes. So yeah, it's a crazy time.
Yeah, we're running out of time for my questions, so I'll be waiting for questions in the Q&A. So start typing those in now. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you one last for me, which is I read the book. I love the book. It ends on a satisfying note, but I feel like maybe there could be room for more stories in this universe. Am I right? Can you give me some hints?
Well, I think it's official. I think we're allowed to talk about it, but there will be Curie Society Volume 2 and 3. So
2 and 3. Wow.
Yeah. So this is now going to be a saga. It's not just a full saga. But yeah, I mean, we could, Adam, I don't know if some hints we can give, but the all those loose threads that you see, we'll be picking those up in the sequel.
And continuing to see the characters grow and continuing those ethical debates and just building out the world of the Curie Society. We made it, we deliberately said it was an international society. The chapter that we're at isn't even the original chapter. That would be in Paris, where Marie Curie was living and working during her time. So we can visit all different chapters of the society over the world, meet all new members of the society that live in different countries, come from different places. And we're excited to just be able to further explore this world, because we set it up for ourselves to have a lot of more territory to cover, with crossing our fingers, hoping that we would be able to actually follow through on that, and we're going to be able to. So we're very excited.
That's great. No, I love that it feels lived in, and it feels like we're saying with alternate histories, where this is a world where one thing went different, but there's all this other stuff that spins out from that. And it sort of led into, I guess, another one of the themes, which is women in science. This is not a new thing. This goes back to Curie and beyond. This is like, as long as there's been science, there's been women doing science. And I felt like it was just really satisfying to see that dramatized and baked into the narrative, the structure of the world that way.
Yeah, and Marie Curie is the tip of this whole iceberg of women who have done amazing things over the course of history and not gotten any notoriety for it. So the real world of the women who are actually out there doing all these things. There's so many people that we never heard of that we learned about and found out existed through the process of making this book. And it's just, this fascinating, really existing history that no one talks about. But then being able to just show like young readers who are maybe interested in getting into science, it's like, this isn't a new thing. You don't have to be a pioneer to want to go, you know, study chemistry in college or whatever. You know, it's been, even if you haven't heard about it, it's been around for a long time. You don't have to be scared of following this path.
That's a great message. We have a question here from Laura, who says, are there any historical women or non-binary scientists who you think would have joined the Curie Society if it were real and they were given the opportunity? And she adds, if this is somehow a book spoiler, feel free not to answer.
Well, first of all, before we start, I want to say hi to Laura. No relation. The Staffaroni is a pretty uncommon name, and this is the first time I'm meeting Laura because of this event. So
a likely story.
Hello, Laura. But from there, there's a little snapshot of her in the book, but I had a ton of fun learning about Hedy Lamarr, who, yeah, just, you know, famous movie star, but also responsible for inventing the technology that Wi-Fi internet is based on. The stuff she invented to control torpedoes, remote control torpedoes, is now some of the base technology that we use to keep our laptops on the internet. And just reading about her amazing history, that was a, you know, just fascinating. And again, the things that I loved the most were the most unexpected. So this famous movie star was also this brilliant scientist, and you never, if it didn't happen in real life, that's something that we, you know, wouldn't have thought to invent for the book, you know. So the fact that it's real history, you know, just opens up our minds on everything that's possible in what we're creating for the stories.
And it fits so well into this idea of a secret society, because in real life, it wasn't that publicized because all sorts of reasons, mostly involving men. But
right.
in fiction, of like this idea of she does this and keeps it on the down low because she's busy being a movie star, like that's a fun way to do it. It's really neat.
Laura, you'll find that many of in the book we highlight that there are numerous women who are secretly involved in the society. So what Adam just talked about is just the tip of the iceberg there, in terms of who's a Curie agent.
In the book, you've got adventure, you've got secret societies, you've got like raids, science, espionage, cool fights. And I was wondering, like, did you start with, I want to put all this stuff into it, or did it flow from, once we have these characters in this world, you know, we got to have the secret base, we got to have the raids, we got to have the cool climactic fights. Like, I'm wondering which came first, the cool stuff or the premise?
The premise and the cool stuff sort of came together because it was this idea of the Curie Society. But I have to say, it really does go back to that Comic-Con panel. And she said, the panelist said, you know, it would be really cool if Q from James Bond. And then from there, we were like, yeah, it would be really cool if this was a spy thriller and everyone was using all their science skills to do cool action, just like in comic books, you know. And so that's where the comic book, it all sort of came together. And I have to say, the science action, as we call it in this book, were some of the trickiest sequences that we worked through.
Why?
Well, because, you know, in a normal comic book, somebody just punches somebody and you go, okay, punch, you know. But with science action, you know, it's like, we're like, okay, so Maya's got an electrical charge on her ring. So we're setting this whole, oh, wait, I don't want to give it away. Wait, I don't want to give it, I'm not going to.
Don't spoil it.
I don't want to spoil it. But yeah.
There's some science and there's some action.
Yeah, overlapping them together, you know, because we didn't want everyone to just be like punching everyone. It's using their intelligence. Like that's really where we are. So it's smart action. But yeah, no, we had a blast. We had a blast putting it together. It was just always, every decision we were making creatively was, is this the most fun possible? And then we would just sort of flow from there.
That's a great question to organize a book, and I would say a life around that. Also, I want to sit next to you two at a comics convention panel, because it sounds like you just walk out with these great ideas for books.
That was the most productive panel we've been to, I promise.
It's amazing. We have a question from an anonymous attendee who says, I'm not sure if you can answer this. Hello, will there be a TV or film version one day soon? Thanks. And they signed it Hank, so they're not anonymous. It was Hank all along.
It was Agatha all along. Well, what I can say there is that stay tuned. I would say, yeah, is what we'll say there. But yeah, we would be very excited. It's I mean, it's a whole expansive world. There really are so many stories to tell. So we're with you, Hank. T. Hanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, you also have the advantage that these characters are, like, you don't need a huge CG budget when they're standing around talking to each other, because they're just regular women, regular scientists. They have some fancy technology, which would be amazing to see on screen, but it's not like, you know, like Fantastic Four, where the thing just standing there costs $1,000 a minute, sort of thing.
Right. Hulk has to disappear from the movie for at least 45 minutes.
Hulk, go over here. Be back for climax. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, we do have some mammoths in this book, so that might be a little expensive, but we'll figure it out.
We can fix it, put some elephants in, fix it in post.
Well, who knows, by the time the TV show gets made, actual mammoths.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
I
put it in the book, and then actually just a couple months ago, there was a scientist putting out a job description online, like hiring people to go work in a mammoth lab.
Interesting.
Like actually recruiting people for it. That was one of the things that came real way sooner than we thought.
That's cool. That's super cool. I wanted to ask you about writing the characters. So I also am a writer, and the three leads had such distinctive voices and personalities. I was wondering tricks you have to capture the voice of a character that way.
It all starts with, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the authenticity of pulling from real people. I think whoever gave you that advice, that is like the smartest. That is the smartest advice, because then when you think about, you know, what the characters would say or do in any given situation, you can just, like, in your head, have that person be talking to you, and that will help inform, at least for me, a good part of these interactions. But also just this idea that these are all young women who are still finding themselves, I think was a really just like a wonderful starting place for this book. That's at that age, and this is why that age is such a tricky. It's a tricky time, but it's a fun time to play with from a character perspective, because no one is really, and you only learn this more as you get older, but you're not really set at that point. You know, it's like things that seem so you're so in the moment when you're in college or in high school. You know, when you get older, you understand that those were really growing and learning moments. So we just wanted to set up all these different characters to have all these. It was really important to have different points of view, so that even when representing the scientific process, to have the different points of view about this, you know, as a sort of somebody that was into biology, Simone would come with this point of view. Someone that was into math, Maya, would come from this point of view, and just to have that sort of overlap with their different personalities. But yeah, it started with all the women that we interviewed, and just went from there.
I remember being in high school and someone telling me these would be the best years of your life. I remember thinking, no, I don't think so. I'm still a baby, and I'm going to be a baby for a long time. Like, I don't want to, you know, decide who I am and peak at 18 and then just gradually decline over there for the next, hopefully 130 years. I want to still be learning and growing as you develop. And I feel like that's, you know, pretty important.
There was definitely something cathartic about having all our characters show up for freshman year with all the confidence in the world, and then, you know, just having fun popping each of those balloons for each of them over the course of the story.
Yeah, when you're not the person whose balloon's being popped, but you know, because you've had your own balloon pop like that.
Felt it.
Yeah.
I love writing about being a freshman in college, but definitely not actually being a freshman in college. I'm good there.
I still wake up sometimes and remember in second year undergrad where someone I'd known kind of like we chatted sometimes turned to me after 2 years and said, "What is my name?" And I didn't know. And I can't even remember what I said because it's just like this blank in my memory. I'll remember to my deathbed. Like I finally tolerate the extreme embarrassment. But yeah, university.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we should wrap it up. This has been great. I feel like I've already read the book, and talking to you makes me want to read it again, which I feel like is the mark of a good conversation. And for people who don't have the book, you can get it at your local bookstore or at Brookline Booksmith. And I'm sure that we can hear about that in just a second.
Indeed. Hello. Yes, so I just dropped that link again. The Eventbrite link you can still buy books from, and potentially still get some of the, I'm not sure what, I know we had some like cool swag. I'm not sure what's left as far as the signed book plates and pins go, but if we do have any left and you want to try and get that, you can still totally buy your books from that link I just dropped in the chat. We're very appreciative of your purchases and your presence, and these lovely authors, Ryan, Adam, and Heather. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, that about wraps it up for me. Was there anything else you guys wanted to maybe new work that's coming where people can find you? Anything like that?
I should have asked that. Any new work, and where can people find you, Heather and Adam?
Oh my God. Yes, so you can find us at eepuniverse.com. That's our website where all of our stuff is happening. Our previous works, you can listen to them. They are podcasts, fiction podcasts, radio plays, and it's Lethal Lit and Daughters of DC. And the next project we're working on is called See You in Your Nightmares. It's a psychological horror. I don't even know. We're still figuring it out. It's happening in real time. And that's the next one coming up. And we also have a virtual influencer / K-pop band called Free Hexel, who is on YouTube and Spotify. So we are working on a lot of crazy stuff. Those are all the things.
Heather covered it. This is the newest. This is the newest.
Awesome.
Love it.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. I hope everybody has a lovely night, and we'll see you around.
Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.